welcome Theon and everyone else. If you're able to do cameras on, it would be so great to be together. If you're doing something in the background, I would say still put your camera on. We can handle it. We can do your dishes with you. We can drive with you. We can do school drop off. We can do it together. But the conversation today was prompted originally by Rebecca, who's in the room, who basically said in a moment of very warranted frustration, it's really hard to figure out how to stick to my values, fight for what I believe, say everything that I think needs to be said, fight for justice, and then also find the line of making sure that I'm protecting my business, not compromising investors. And that complicated line, I certainly feel like I have been dancing that line for every single minute that I've been building Silver Lining. The audacity to stand for what we believe and to use our business as a tool for justice, and to figure out how to continue to build a reputation that is strong and solid and allows us to grow and hit our goals so we can have the maximum impact in our finances and in the world. That balance, that's a hard, I have no idea what the right answer is, which is why I'm not the speaker today. But when Rebecca was saying that, and I was really feeling the pain and thinking, oh my God, I really understand that pain, I said to her, oh my gosh, I know exactly who we should ask to come talk to us about this. And so Theon Hill is here. In addition to being ridiculously accomplished and just very impressive, is just an incredibly good person who I enjoy immensely. I've been trying for a long time to figure out how to do more work with Theon. I'm going to Chicago to see if I can track him down in a couple of weeks. But Theon, I'm not gonna do you justice. Could I give it to you, and could I have you just tell the group a bit about you? I think if they understood the work that you've done in academia and politics and marketing, it would be exciting to hear. And then most importantly, we need to know what you know and what you think we need to know. So I'm going to hand it to you, and I have got my pen and paper. I am a student more than a facilitator today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much to my dear sister Carissa. I am just always blessed to be in conversation with you and in dialogue with you. I always go back to that first conversation that we had when you talked about, hey, when we're talking about small businesses, this is a justice matter. And that was the initial spark of friendship that has continued to grow and blossom in continued ways over these past couple of years. And so I'm just really grateful to be in community with you and with all of you, to be in dialogue with you today. Just a little bit about myself. Yes, I am an associate professor of communication at Wheaton College right outside of Chicago. In addition to that, I serve as the executive director of the Center for Faith and Innovation here at Wheaton College, which is a center that is committed to fueling and supporting small businesses and entrepreneurship within the local community, but we also operate in the broader community. We also use our Center for Faith and Innovation as an opportunity to encourage our students to consider careers in small business development and entrepreneurship. And they gain valuable experience through this center, working with small businesses and traveling around the world in some cases. And so I've been in that director role for 2 years now, and we've continued to grow, and we host events every year. I mean, we're really excited. We actually have an event coming up here in Chicago with the former Indianapolis Colts coach Tony Dungy in a couple of months. So this is a really exciting opportunity to lead in this space. In addition to that, as Carissa said, my research deals with political communication, business communication, as it intersects with themes of justice in society. And so the work that Silver Lining is doing is in lockstep with what my both academic and community engagement seeks to accomplish. And so I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to partner with them today. So I have some time to speak with you all. Carissa, if it's okay, can I jump right on into my presentation? Is that cool to go there? Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, we'd love it.
Okay. So I'm going to start with a story, if you all are right with that, because every talk should start with a story. Just give me a second to put my slides up here. Columbo, can you see my slides? Okay, we good? Okay.
Very good.
Hallelujah. I was driving in an Uber in the Gold Coast of Australia 2 weeks ago. I was in I was in Australia, 4 days in Sydney, 4 days in Gold Coast, speaking about some trends in corporate communication in global society. And so I had finished my time in Sydney, then I was heading to Gold Coast. And as soon as I set foot in my Uber ride, the Uber driver who was taking me to my hotel immediately launches into an in depth analysis of US politics. And this person is immediately saying, here's what's happening with your election. Here's what I think needs to happen. What do you think? And it, it was impressed upon me how much we cannot escape some of these complex social justice issues that we're talking about. Because this driver was talking to me about how do we talk about history, talking to me about race relations, reproductive rights, the full gamut. And this was only a 20-minute Uber ride. We covered a lot of territory. And so that kind of situation kind of impressed the issues that we're talking about today. When and where do we choose to use our voices in these complex social justice issues? As a general principle, we're going to go back to Athens to start our conversation today. My goal in our conversation, though, is I want us to understand principles of when, how, and specifically what should we say in those kind of situations when we choose to exercise our voice. When, how, and what should we say? And so by the end of our time together this afternoon, or wherever you're calling from, whatever time of day it is, I want you to have some clear tools to evaluate if you should be using your voice in this particular way in your particular community. But as I said, we're going to start in Athens. Um, let's go to Plato. Plato gives us some really good thoughts. Wise, we're going to adjust it to people. Wise people speak because they have something to say. Fools, because they have to say something. And I want to start there because I would tell you that more often than not, silence is your best tool. If we go back in a US context to 2020 when there was that season of racial unrest, a large number of companies, small businesses rushed to put out statements. And what was ironic is everybody on Facebook is changing their screen to a black photo to talk about their mourning over the loss of Black lives. But in many ways, some of those actions were actually counterproductive for the very causes that the businesses wanted to advance. And so sometimes we need to pause in silence to figure out what should we say before we face the need, before we feel like we need to be leading the conversation, and we need to avoid the temptation to be the first person to say something. That usually is not going to be helpful in these kind of circumstances. But let's get a little more specific. What is the landscape? Why are we having this conversation? This has been an interesting year. If I think about it as a professor, I think about my life in school years. So 2023 to 2024, we start out the year and then October 7th hits. And we see the violence that erupts in the Israel-Hamas war. And certainly we see a lot of activism around the globe where people are sharing their thoughts on what can and should happen in that conflict, and how much that constrained and dictated conversations. But if we're going to be clear, it wasn't just Israel-Hamas that was happening right then, because we still have an ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Between the Ukrainian army and the Russian army. And there's differences, different opinions that people have about how we should respond to this. And there's pressure put on companies, at least in my community, to have the Ukrainian flag in their windows as a sign of solidarity. In Chicago, where I joined this conversation today from, we have an ongoing migrant busing crisis, where migrants are being bused at a very high rates of 2,000 people a week and just being dropped off on city corners. Chicago's population has swelled over 80,000 people over the last year and a half, with people just being dropped off who've entered the US on our southern border. And guess what? A lot of people have thoughts about this. And then, in case you forgot, it's an election season. There is an election going on. Please do not watch the debate from last week. You will be depressed. It was not a happy moment. My wife, who grew up in Canada, told me that we're moving back at the end of the summer. But there's a debate that's going on right now. And let's be clear, what we're seeing not only in US politics, but politics around the globe are various movements that threaten to upend the global order. You could look at the recent French election, German election, Italian election, Argentinian election. You could look at a lot of these elections. They are all doing a lot that threatens to reshape how various countries relate to one another. So there's a lot happening in this moment. And let's be clear, it's not just these major issues that's happening, but we also have matters of reproductive rights, climate change. We have issues of how we talk about history related to various issues. There's a lot going on in the world. And for many businesses, the question is, how do we relate to current events? What is our responsibility in these moments? How should we speak about them, or should we speak about them at all? And so for some of you, it may not be an issue as large as Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but you may have issues that you're facing in your local community that call you to respond, that you're wondering if you even should respond, and if so, how do you respond? So if you face that pressure, if you face those tensions, this talk is for you today. And I want to be clear. As we go along, as you have questions, please throw them in the chat box, because we're going to have some time for Q&A at the end, and I will be happy to answer any and all questions that come my way today. So I'm really excited about this conversation. So let's start. One of the trends that we've seen that I think in many ways serves as a catalyst for this conversation is changes in what we expect for businesses in the marketplace. If we were to go back to 2017 or 2018, only about 66% of consumers expected businesses to speak out on social justice issues. But a couple of years later, in 2022, that number swells to 72%, and it's only continued to grow. And so it's not just that, hey, something's happening in the world, should we speak about it? It's that the expectations of your constituents are evolving. People now expect you to express solidarity with or distaste for various trends. But that's a tricky tightrope to walk, because should we speak, or what should we say? And we've seen many examples of companies that have tried to speak and failed, or many companies who've tried to stay silent and gotten a great deal of backlash. So the question is, if we're expected to speak, how do we do this well? I want to begin with a couple of examples. I'm not particularly interested in naming brands today, because we just want to keep brands out of it and just use the examples that their stories tell us. But there's a popular coffee shop that circulates throughout the US. And a couple of years ago, they had a major issue pop up in their coffee shop. One of the issue was there were two Black men who were denied use of their restroom. And the two Black men who were denied use of their restroom became very upset at what they perceived accurately to be a racist denial of the use of restroom facilities. So the men refused to leave the restaurant. Ultimately, the manager on duty at this coffee shop called the police, and the two Black men were arrested. You can imagine, as soon as the media got caught wind of this story, it blew up on the national stage. And this company immediately faced an image crisis. They claimed to be an inclusive, diverse, equitable space, but now two Black men are being arrested for trying to use the bathroom in their shop. So how does the company respond? In this situation, they had to speak out about this social justice issue, because it directly implicated their ability to operate their business successfully. They didn't have a choice in this situation. And so what they did is they considered, and they ended up executing, they shut down all of their coffee shops for several hours, 8,000 coffee shops across the country, across the US, for a DEI training, an implicit bias training. Then they brought in experts, the head of the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund, Brian Stevenson, who wrote the famous book Just Mercy about inequality in the criminal justice system. They brought them in to talk to their high-level leaders about implicit bias and the way in which it surfaces in local spaces like coffee shops. Now, the company, they took a PR hit for the initial offense. but they were lauded in communities around the nation for the clear action steps they took to make to make a wrong right, or to try to make this a key part of their company culture moving forward. And so in that case, they had to speak about this issue. But let's stick with this same company. You might be wondering, why is there this random black blob on the other side of the slide? I'm so glad you asked. It's because I'm trying to leave brands out of it. This same company, a couple of years or around the same time, around the season of racial unrest, they decided and they encouraged their baristas to write "race together" on coffee cups that they were distributing to customers as a means of trying to stimulate in-depth conversations about race. Now, in contrast to how they responded to the bathroom controversy, this story went slightly different because they're writing "race together" on the cups as a means of serving as a catalyst for conversations about race. I don't know how you all get your hot beverages, but many of their customers don't go into the coffee shop wanting to have an in-depth conversation about 400 years of white supremacy in the US. That was not what they were expecting to get. And so they got a lot of backlash and public criticism, even for people who were concerned about racial injustice, because, like, what are you all doing here? And here was the word that was directed against them: it feels like you are being performative just to try to get people to buy your product. So what do they face? They face an authenticity or a sincerity crisis. Their actions did not align with people's expectations of their company. It's like, you're pandering to people to get us to buy your coffee. In many ways, is this really your place to try to be the leader on conversations on race in society? That's not what we came to you for. So in this situation, their decision to speak out on social justice issues did not help them. It ended up hurting them. And so we see the same company with two very different responses for their efforts to enter the foray of complex social justice issues, which raises a question for us. How do we know if we're doing it right, a la bathroom situation, or wrong, a la race together? What is the approach that we should take to ensure that we're on good grounding when we try to enter these conversations? So the question that we face, and let me be clear, we're going to face it more in the days to come. This is not just a story of what's happened over the past 10 to 15 years around hot button issues. We're only going to get these questions more and more as hot button issues continue to emerge in the public sphere and as polarization persists. So there's three questions that I want to organize our conversation around today. The first question: is this issue directly related to your business goals or core values? Is this issue directly related to your business goals or core value? One of the errors that we might say that the coffee company did when they started writing "race together" on their cups is, like, people wanting, how does this relate to what you're doing? How does this relate to your core values? That's not to say that there was no space for them to express solidarity with marginalized, racialized communities. That's not my point there. But how is writing "race together" on a coffee cup directly related to your business goals or core values? So one of the key things that you need to think about here is alignment. Alignment between the issue and your business goals. I mentioned at the outset my affinity for Carissa after our first conversation, because she's like, justice is directly related to my conception of small business development and small business support. So there's an issue of alignment. This is the direct outgrowth of her concern over justice in society. Silver lining is one of the ways in which, hey, how do we promote economic justice in communities? You also have to think about, can your business make a real difference on this issue in your local community? Can your business make a real difference on this issue in your local community? And there's different ways to answer this question. And I want to make it clear. In a little bit, we're actually going to walk through some scenarios together, and I'm going to ask you all to use the chat box to tell me what you do in this situation. So we're going to take a couple minutes here and there. We're going to go through three scenarios with small businesses, hypothetical, so no names are going to be given out. But can your business make a real difference on this issue in the community? So in this sense, this is not just a question of alignment, but capacity or potential impact. What can you actually do about this issue? And number three, something for you to consider. Will your customers, employers, and local partners support your stance on this matter? Now, when you hear this question, I'm not saying that this third question needs to drive your decision, but it should be part of your calculus. You should think about, how are our core constituencies going to respond to this? Because here's what you need to think about. You have these three questions, and in many ways, many either DEI experts or small business experts, even corporate experts, they'll operate with variations of these three questions. With these three questions, here's how you should think about it. If your answer to all three of these questions is yes, you definitely need to say something. If your answer to all three of these questions is yes, you need to say something. If your answer is yes to two of these questions, it's kind of a maybe situation. And what I mean by maybe is, maybe you should say something, maybe you shouldn't. But you also need to think about, you always don't need to lead the conversation. So maybe if you say yes to one and to three, maybe you say something, or maybe you just try to amplify the voice of local activists or local actors or policymakers who are doing work on this issue already. You may not need to be front and center in this issue. So if your answer is yes to two of them, maybe just slow down, amplify the voices of others, or develop strategic partnerships with those who are advocating for this particular issue in your community. If you answer no to all of them, or answer yes to only one of them, generally what I would encourage a business to do is not say anything at that moment, but to continue to monitor the situation, because we know with a lot of these issues, they're constantly evolving. These issues are changing day to day. For instance, what's happening with the current conflict between Israel and Hamas is very different today than it was October 7th. There's different issues. The issue continues to evolve. What's happening with migrant buses in Chicago is different than the beginning of this current crisis that we face in the Chicago area. So on the local level, you want to continue to monitor the situation. So yes to all three, you need to say something. Yes to two of them, maybe. Maybe take the approach of amplifying other voices. And so you develop strategic partnerships, or you express solidarity with those who are doing the work. One or no to all of them, continue to monitor the situation. As you think about preparing responses, let's say that you're in a situation where you're going to say yes to all three questions. So you need to say something. How should you prepare responses? What do you need to think about? What do you need to consider? How do you need to drive the conversation so that you actually say something meaningful in the situation? The first thing I will tell you is that the work of responding to complex social issues starts before the issue actually emerges. And what I mean by that is, if I were to go back to 2020, when we had a season of racial unrest here in the US, one of the mistakes that many businesses made is that they had no plan in place for how to respond in a crisis. And so what you had them doing is tweeting out things that were half-baked, or issuing statements that didn't really represent an understanding of the issue, or taking actions that looked like a coffee company putting race together on their cup. It looked performative. They knew people expected them to say something, but they had never really thought about, what are we going to say in this type of issue? And so when we're preparing response, several steps that you need to think about. And I'm trying to emphasize this on the local level. Our theme song today is going to be Drake's statement, we're going to start out local. So the first thing you need to do, list in your company context, think about what are important local topics that could impact or affect your business. Which means what? You need to know what's happening in your city council, what's happening in the school board, what's happening on the state, local level. So you need to think about, Could it be a change to public policy surrounding environmental issues? Could it be a change to public policy running this? Could it be activism or surrounding something? You need to think about and think strategically what topics could affect your business. Now, think about this in the context of your mission. We'll get to that in a second. Think about this in the context of your goal, but you need to have a good idea. For instance, I work in higher education. If you've watched the news at all, you've seen that college students are protesting pretty heavily with their thoughts about what's happening between Israel and Hamas. So, one of the reasons why that example is going to come up in my conversations now is that has salience to my workplace. I'm getting emails about that all the time. I'm getting asked to contribute my voice to this statement or contribute my voice to that statement. So, that's an issue that a couple of years ago, I started researching the Middle East because I just had a feeling that at some point, given the ways in which I teach and research on themes related to injustice, I'm going to be pressured to speak into this controversy. And I have a opposition to speaking into issues where I don't know what I'm talking about. So you need to think ahead. What are the issues 2 to 3 years from now that could come up? What are the issues that could impact your business? Another thing you need to do here is as you're thinking about this, check how other small businesses in your area are responding. They don't necessarily have to be peer businesses or within the same industry, but look back to 2020. Look back to, you know, election season. How do businesses in your area respond? Look at the landscape. This afternoon or this morning, I was driving through my community and I saw a business that I frequent quite often had just put a Black Lives Matter sign in their window. I was like, well, y'all a little late to the party. But, that was about 6 years ago, but okay, you got there eventually. But they kind of looked at the terrain of the businesses in my community and said, oh, this is in vogue to do. Maybe we should do the same thing. Now, we could talk about the effectiveness of how late they were to do that. That's another conversation. But they clearly had looked at what are other businesses in their community doing, and they made a decision based on that in part. Third, understand where your business stands compared to local voices on key issues. I'll give an example of this. There's a small business that I'm actually trying really hard to connect with Silver Lining when they come to Chicago in a couple months. There's a small business in my community that I think is doing wonderful work on the entrepreneurial level, but they're also doing wonderful work on the social justice level. There's times where this small business feels constrained, like we need to issue a statement. The owner of this business, she'll call me and text me like, hey, Theon, this happened. What should we do? It's like, let's chill for a second. Let's see what's happening. Let's get all of our facts before we respond to this issue. And one of the things that we frequently do when I consult for this business is I will tell them, hey, let's look who are the key local activists, political players, or other influencers on this issue. Because the one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to issue a statement of solidarity and have those activists, actors, or policymakers look at your business and try to call you out for stepping into a theme that you have no place in. If I were to give an example of this, a few years ago, there was a football team here in the US, the Washington football team. They formerly had a name that was a racist slur against indigenous peoples. They tried to issue a major statement on the Thanksgiving holiday in the US and wish everyone happy Thanksgiving. And they inadvertently created a public media disaster, a public relations disaster, because everyone's like, you literally have the name, a racist slur against indigenous peoples, and you're trying to celebrate Thanksgiving and solidarity between European settlers and indigenous peoples. That's inconsistent. So they achieved backlash because the positionality they were trying to achieve was inconsistent with the perceived values of the organization in the public sphere. So you need to think carefully. Do we have a relationship with activists? Do we have a relationship with policymakers? Do we have a relationship with the key influencers? And once again, all of this is advanced preparation. So if I'm trying to talk you through this, once you identify what the issues are, then you look at how have companies responded to this in my community in the past. You need to start building relationships with various players in this topic so that when everything goes down, you're not looking to enter the conversation, but you already have a place there and people already know that you have a commitment to this issue. You're not entering it as a stranger, you're entering it as one of the key words, an ally. They know that they can count on you to be an ally in this topic. So let's say we've done this work. We know the issues. Now we have to figure out, how do we craft our message? There are 4 questions we need to ask as we seek to craft our message. What are your business's main goals, long-term vision, core values, and overall plan? So for instance, I've mentioned this a couple times, but like economic justice and silver lining, that's one of their core values. And so let's say, I'm just going to create a hypothetical. Let's say that there's legislation tomorrow that outlaws women and minority communities from launching small businesses. I would expect Silver Lining to have something to say about that because that is directly tied to their core values. If they didn't say something about it, I would feel that it's a betrayal of their positionality in the marketplace. And so one of the key things you have to think about is, how can you not only recognize alignment between the issue and your core values, but you need to express the alignment in whatever statement you release. You need to show how I'm speaking about this. We as a company are speaking about this because this is directly tied to our presence in this community. You have to think about what local issues or changes could potentially hurt your business or go against what you stand for. And I mean, we can think about, on the local level, think about your state Supreme Court, or your local legislative or judicial circuit. What rulings could they make that go against your business or your business values? You have to preemptively consider these. And when I say, how can your business make a real difference in addressing these issues, think about some of these issues as kind of like a gathering. What are you bringing to the gathering? Now, on a basic level, let's say you're in the food service industry. Let's say you're in the food service industry and there's a march happening. What if you donated some food or beverages to marchers who are going on a hot day? You're saying, this is our lane. This is how we can show our solidarity, what's happening, by contributing our goods to those who are trying to advocate for this issue that we are concerned about. That's a very simple and tangible way in which you can express that. And when you do those kind of things, you better make sure, like, your social media feeds, they should show it. You should show, we're proud of the ways in which we're contributing to this. We're proud of the ways in which we're standing alongside those who are being oppressed or marginalized in our community. Or we're proud for our solidarity with key actors on this issue. And think about, what is the unique perspective that you can offer? Especially as we're thinking about like legislation regarding finance or economics in your community. One of the key concerns that so many of our communities are concerned about right now is job creation. You all are small business owners. You are the lifeblood of the economies in your nation states. Like, without you, we have nothing. And so as the lifeblood of the economy, your unique perspective is that, how does this encourage or discourage small business growth and development? So like, don't try to be something that you're not. Feel very comfortable speaking, as a small business owner, here's how this issue impacts me. Think about things like climate change. Those are directly relevant to your ability to have sustainable supply chains in small businesses. This matters to you. And so how can you bring a unique perspective? Because what does that do? That allows you to speak where you are credible, and it allows you to give another reason that many of your activist, policymaker, or influencer partners might not have thought about. You become an asset, not just another voice saying the same thing. And then think about this. Which topics do your customers, employees, and local partners generally agree on? Whenever you can identify moments of solidarity or moments of agreement, that is always a good starting point. You start with where you agree on, and then you move to where the tensions lie. So you start on those points of solidarity. All of us agree that small business development is important to a healthy economy. Okay, we agree on that. You're not going to find, even here in the US, you're not going to find many people on the left or the right that disagree with that. So Let's talk about policy A. Does this help or discourage small business development? Now we've started in solidarity. Now we're moving to the points of tension and we're articulating our voice on the basis of a shared goal that we can leverage to argue for a particular point. So let's have some fun trying this out. We're gonna get back to this, but we're gonna do 3 scenarios. And I'm gonna try to give you a couple of minutes, but here's the question. I'm gonna give you a prompt, and using the chat box, you can use the Q&A box. I don't care. Use whatever you want. Let me know. I'm gonna give you about like a minute per one. Should the company say anything or not? So you can answer yes, maybe, or no. Should the company say anything or not? These are all hypothetical examples that are rooted in real circumstances that small, locally owned businesses face day by day. So, our first one, scenario 1, a local bookstore facing questions over LGBTQ plus rights. A small independent bookstore is considering whether to publicly support a local LGBTQ plus rights initiative. So just take 60 seconds. You can use the chat box, you can use the Q&A box. Independent bookstore. Should they publicly support this initiative? Take 60 seconds. With each of these scenarios, we'll walk through why I would recommend a certain action for them. So we will walk through it. Carissa's like, I need more information. Columbo, way to go with the poll. Good luck, or whoever did the poll. Like, thank you. We'll do 2 more polls like that, and if you can just give me for those, it will be yes, maybe, no. So, but thank you for that poll. That is clutch. Okay, we ready to discuss? What does the poll say? Okay, 62% say yes, 38% say no. Okay. So for this one, I would generally say, let's walk through the questions. Let's walk through the question. Does the issue align with company strategy? Generally, yes. Bookstores generally are places that promote diverse voices and inclusive literature. That's generally, if you're talking about a small independent bookstore, that's generally the MO that they get. Now, this can be different, and I want to be clear. This can be different in particular communities. Can the bookstore meaningfully influence the issue? Maybe. While the bookstore's reach is limited to the people who come in the bookstore, it could potentially influence local customers. It could potentially host meaningful events. There's a variety of ways that it could. I mean, even at different parades or supports. Will your constituents agree with speaking out? This is, I would suggest, why Carissa was wringing her hands at points, and that's like, it's uncertain because we don't know the community. You know, we don't know. The bookstore's customer base is diverse. So some will probably like, yes, thank you so much for speaking. Others will be like, why are you doing this? And so there's going to be a range of responses. So this is one of those, there's probably 2 yeses, 1. So this is where this scenario presents a mixed case where careful consideration is needed before deciding whether and how to speak out. If I were advising this bookstore, what I would probably tell the bookstore is, this is a scenario where you might want to try to partner with and support local activists, stakeholders. This is worded as an initiative, which means that there's probably something politically relevant or maybe a public policy at stake here. So maybe you consider supporting it as a partner as opposed to leading the conversation. That's generally without more specifics. And let's be clear, for some of these things, there was no way without grounding it in a local community that you could know everything. But just at a bird's eye view, I would say I would tell this group, let's maybe support this issue as a secondary partner as opposed to the lead voice. So y'all see how this is going to work a little bit? We ready for a second one? All right. Let's jump in with a second. Family-owned restaurant, because I'm getting hungry now, and environmental regulations. A family-owned restaurant is debating whether to publicly oppose new local environmental regulations that would increase their operating costs. Take a minute. And as you continue to answer, we got about 30 seconds left here. I've tried to develop scenarios that really are emphasizing local circumstances that a small business would face. And it's important to identify, depending on the size of your business, how you utilize your voice. You may not be like a Fortune 500 company. That doesn't mean that you don't have a voice. It just means that you have to be careful in how you choose to leverage and utilize your voice in the community. And I think paying attention to the local issues is one of the key ways that you can speak into the community that you belong to. All right. What do we have on the results? Okay. 69% say yes. 26% say maybe. 6% say no. I'm actually going to go against the majority here and say no. Because what's the key there? To publicly oppose. To publicly oppose. So let's walk through this. If I can get, there we go, hang on slides. Okay. Does this issue align with company strategy? Yes, certainly. This is important because it's going to raise their cost. Now, we talked about this as a policy, a local, these are regulations, so these have already been enacted. These have already been enacted. So it's not like this is on the table, but you're publicly opposing new regulations. If they've been passed as regulations, there's generally going to be support for them. Because one thing politicians don't generally do is do things that are going to cost them their seats, because politicians love to keep power. Now, for you small business owners who are like, but some of these are going to hurt us. I'm not saying there's nothing you can do. I'm just saying publicly opposed, probably not. Can you meaningfully influence the issue? Probably not. Because if this issue was developed as a regulation, it was probably done in response to constituent cries or constituent advocacy efforts. Can a business come in and meaningfully influence the issue by itself? Probably not. Probably not. Will your constituents agree with speaking out? Once again, if it was already passed, it was probably passed in a community where there's support from it. So if I'm just reading this from the prompt, many customers are likely to be environmentally conscious in a community where there was enough support to pass this regulation and may disagree with opposition to green. So like they're likely to be support, and they may disagree with your opposition to various green initiatives. Now, in this case where it's like, hey, I'm not against the environment, but these particular regulations are going to hurt my ability as a small family-owned restaurant to operate. Am I saying that there's nothing you can do? Not at all. What I'm suggesting is that in this case, if I was consulting for this restaurant, I would tell you, don't speak publicly, but instead work privately through local business associations to address concerns with legislators, because legislators can always revise regulations later to meet various constituency needs. And so I would tell you, there's an apparatus in place for you to do this, for you to express your concerns without making yourself vulnerable to the public backlash that you would get. I mean, because I can see those social media campaigns now against this family-owned business, like, we're against the environment, because that may not be how they are, but that's how it's going to be framed by opponents. And one thing I know about the public sphere, it is not built on nuance today. And so you have to speak in spaces where you can offer a nuanced approach. So I would tell that family owned restaurant, do not publicly come out against this, work privately. And I will, like, one of the issues when there was a lot of racial unrest in the US in 2020, one of the issues that I was very concerned about was how do we repair relationships between historically marginalized communities and law enforcement? Now, my concern about that meant that I had to have a very careful approach. It was not important for me to be at every single march, although I did march sometimes. What was more important was for me to be at public hearings and private events with local law enforcement to talk about what can we do. And I'll tell you this, I accomplished a lot more as a community member working with the chief of police of my community than I would have just of shouting outside of the police station. We were able to develop some wonderful initiatives that allowed people to have a greater role and support trends of community policing, but also build solidarity and repair relationships where distrust had surfaced. So sometimes public is not the best strategy. Okay, last example. Tech startup and data privacy legislation. Woohoo! A small tech startup is considering whether to publicly support new data privacy legislation. So the wording of this suggests this legislation has not been passed. So, yes, maybe, or no. Yes, maybe, or no. Got 10 seconds left. You get to see what everyone thinks on this one. And I know when we get to the Q&A, y'all are still gonna come at me over that family-owned restaurant because I know I was going against the current there. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, 58% said yes, 29% said maybe, 13% said no. I would suggest let's walk through this one. Does this issue align with company strategy? Yes. You're a tech startup and we're talking about data. 100%. Can you meaningfully influence the issue? Possibly. As experts in the field of data privacy, your opinion could carry weight as opposed to like just someone like me who might be concerned about, this social media company having too much of my information. So you're an expert in the field if you're a tech startup. Will your constituents agree with speaking out? I would say generally yes. I've not found many people. I was like, we want various marketers and government agencies to have more of our information. That's not one that's one of those rare points of agreement. Like generally, people have been been concerned about data privacy in recent years. So for this situation, this scenario to me presents a strong case for speaking out. All three criteria that we have here are met positively or potentially positive. I would tell this company, I don't think there's many risks that you face in speaking out on this issue. So I would yes, let's start crafting something that's going to be helpful for you in speaking out on this issue, whether via social media or op-ed pieces. I mean, we've been talking in some of the past Slap meetups that I've done about like various communication strategies. This is one where I'd say, yes, let's speak out on this issue. And so we've looked at three different scenarios, from a tech startup to a bookstore to a family-owned restaurant. The one thing I want to communicate is like, these situations are complex like the issues. But what I'm trying to do is before something happens and you go and pay a consultant a ton of money, I'm trying to give you, here's the basic template that you need to utilize. I'm not telling you to never hire a consultant. That's not my point. But I'm saying if you feel like you have to hire one to know how to navigate a situation, at least know what questions to ask to know whether this person actually knows what they're talking about. And here's a basic framework for you to utilize. Think about issue salience, potential impact, and constituency response. Those are the three things that you need to think about very carefully before you choose to speak or not to speak in any of the complex social issues that we face today. I believe we have some time for questions now.
Yes. Although, Theon, can you just tell us all we're doing a good job? Because all of us overachievers are very stressed by the fact that we got all of our answers wrong. We're feeling really sensitive right now and very vulnerable.
So I would suggest the fact that your businesses are still active and we've not seen you in the news suggests you all are doing a great job.
Okay, there's two questions that have come in so far. Guys, if you have questions, throw them in chat. If you're okay with the question being public, put it in the chat over there. If you want to be anonymous about your question, if it feels vulnerable, throw it into the Q&A function, and then you can send it anonymously. We have two anonymous questions, but Theon, I'm gonna do another question first, which is I think an
Sure.
overarching question that I hear in our community a lot. For a lot our community is so diverse. And so
Yes.
a lot of the issues that come up that I think are social justice issues, many people in our community experience as very personal.
Yes.
And for many of us that are small business owners, it's hard to distinguish the personal from the business. Do you have a point of view on when a personal issue should be or a personal point of view should be exercised through the small business? Should they be separate? Should they be together? How would you reconcile that sort of a very maybe something that's a very hot topic at a personal level that maybe is not the right place for your business to talk about? How do you reconcile that when you're a small business owner? That's
Yes.
probably from a marginalized community and probably being personally impacted by these issues.
Yes.
What's your thought on that? I have no idea how to even ask that question properly because it's so
No,
broad.
I'm tracking with you. I think if I'm thinking about this from a business standpoint, obviously, if we're talking about a small business, they're free to do whatever they want with the space that they've curated. But if I'm thinking about this from a business wisdom standpoint, it depends largely on geography.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, let's say that we have the moment of racial unrest that emerges a couple of years ago in relation to in response to like the death of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. If I'm on Chicago's South Side, I have a much greater freedom to speak out, even if it doesn't have anything to do with my business, than if I'm in an affluent Chicago suburb like Oak Brook, Illinois. Those are just going to be very different positionalities. So I would say on the first level, it's a geographical question and a constituency question. Another aspect is, let's say that, okay, the geography doesn't necessarily work in favor of my constituents supporting it. Um, do I need to say something? And I would ask the person, is this something that you need to say as a business, or is it something that you need to say as a individual? And have you curated separate spaces for those?
Mm,
Because I could be active in the community as a business owner with my own space, without necessarily making this an official business statement. Now, ultimately, the person has to make oh no, I saw see that response there. Ultimately, the person has to decide, this is what my business stands for. If you don't want to shop here, if you don't want to give me your business, okay, that, as long as you're consciously making that calculus and you're okay with the outcome, you might gain constituency, you might lose constituents, but you just need to be aware that that's a possibility. Another thing that I've worked with some of the businesses in my community, some of the businesses that I've been working with in my community, they have a passion. One of the issues, there's a business that I'm thinking about right now. They're very concerned about Black maternal health. It's a health service industry, and they're very concerned about Black maternal health. And the numbers say that they should be very concerned about this. Some of the advocacy work that they're trying to do doesn't really fit neatly into their business model. So what I'm working on with them right now is, does it make sense for the volume of business you're doing and the impact that you hope to have in the community to spin off a separate 501c3? Because that would actually give you a greater ability to have more of an advocacy wing and more like a separate identity for your advocacy work and advocacy engagement. And so I would say those are some of the questions that I would just think through as I'm considering, does this come from me? Does it come from my business? Um, how will this speak into my community? You feel free to follow up, like push back or follow up with the question, but I just try to give a
I
couple
have
of
a
options.
follow up, but I'm going to give Kesha's first, which is what if your
Yeah.
business is a personal brand, like a musician, a public figure, a speaker, an author? Does that change the approach?
Yes, I think that that does, because if you are the brand, if you yourself are the brand, I think there's a greater expectation for us to hear from you. There's a degree of invisibility that you're not afforded when you're the brand. So we expect, and I think probably the classic example of this is Michael Jordan feeling the need to speak out about racial justice. I think it was 2017 or 2015 when he issued a statement. Michael Jordan had been reluctant for years to speak out about any kind of racial justice issue. But it got to the point when he was the brand that drove the Jordan Jumpman line. He was the brand that drove the Charlotte Hornets when he was the governor, the NBA governor for the team. And for him not to say something was also communicating something. So when you are the brand, it's important to know that silence also speaks.
Yeah. So this is a complex question, and I'm going to ask it because I know you're such an activist. Is there a way to interpret, or what is the line? How do you hold yourself to the line? Like, right, because we all know, right? Silence makes us
Yeah,
complicit. So it's probably true that if we take a stand from a business, we're going to alienate some people, right? If we don't
sure.
take a stand, we're going to alienate others. So we
Yeah.
unfortunately live in a version of the world where that's true. How do we know when we're being strategic? That's not my cause to say something about. That's not
Sure.
my place to have a public opinion. How do we know that that's strategic versus like selling out or being scared, right? Do you have you how do you help what's your thought on how we hold ourselves accountable, and
Yes.
find the line between being strategic and selling out? Because it would be easy to look at those three questions, I think, and say,
Yeah.
oh well, no, I'll stay silent. But
Yeah.
when
No.
do we need to, even if it is controversial?
So I think I'm gonna try to give a maybe a general response and then get a little in nitty gritty.
Okay.
One of the things I think is really important for small business owners to really do is to break free of a binary. Either I stay silent or I'm out publicly on this issue. So we got to break free of this binary. Like there are other options. And one, if you think when I said like the maybe, do you work through other actors? And so one of the things, let's say it's an issue. Um, let's say Theon Hill is the brand. Am I concerned about the environment? Yes. Am I an expert on environmental issues? No. Do I want to be an ally on environmental issues? Yes. But I don't need to be at the front of that conversation. And so, what I do want to do is, who are the voices on that? And I don't have to be front and center, but what I can do is, hey, I'm going to quietly try to fund what you all are doing. I'm going to quietly try to support you all. How can I quietly do that? Because what you're doing is twofold. You are taking a stand, and let's just say that someone comes and says, hey, why don't you care about the environment? You can say, oh, no, I got receipts. And generally, what will happen is those activists who are leading the charge will say they have receipts in supporting this. One of the most important things, if we go back to the civil rights movement, were the quiet supporters who helped provide the money for the civil rights movement. What most people don't know is that Charlton Heston gave a ton of money to the civil rights movement. James Baldwin helped fund, because these people were constantly getting locked up. If it weren't for all the people who's like, I don't need to be at the front of this, but I want to quietly support this. I mean, the civil rights movement does not go if Harry Belafonte is not giving checks. Dick Gregory, Nina Simone, all these entertainers in Hollywood. Hollywood had paid a lot of money to accelerate the civil rights movement. And so what I'm saying is there's a role even outside of the binary of public versus silence. Now, to that point, to the point you're asking, if we're going to say that if we're saying that there's we're just running away from this, or how do we discern if we're being strategic or we're running away from this? I would suggest that if you have to discern your motivations. Are you just scared of people finding out that you supported a cause? You might be running away from something you know you need to be concerned about. You might just be concerned, or you might just say, this is not an issue where we necessarily have a place in this conversation. So, is it a matter of fit with the issue and your company values, or is it a matter of fear from the fallout? Because I would say if it's a matter of fear of the fallout, there's other ways to insulate your business from attacks and still contribute to the issue.
So, okay, this is so good. I'm so glad I asked that question now. Theon, you're fabulous. Let's talk about that. I know there are some people in the room who have spoken out on issues. I think it probably was strategic. They
Sure.
are facing fallout. How do you suggest you insulate and or manage fallout when you've made the strategic decision, you've stood for the thing you need to, and now there is backlash and fallout? What do you do then? Is that considered crisis comms? Like what's the playbook at that point?
The term for that, and maybe, if I know I have another like meetup coming up, but I would say, and this is a longer conversation, I'm gonna give a little teaser, but I would say that falls into the realm of image repair work. And so what's happening is that your image is out of sync with what your constituents think it should be. And so I say image repair. This is probably the major issue that I've published on in corporate and business spaces over the past 2 years. So I have a lot to say about this. We did last year, Columbo, we did a whole meetup about image repair. So I mean, I can talk for a while about this, but I would say that there's different image repair strategies that I would encourage the business to take to repair their image. So I mean, you can look at a lot of businesses that have faced image crises. You can look at Gillette, you can look at Starbucks, you can look at Ben and Jerry's. But what they've done is they've employed various image repair strategies to try to repair the damage that has been done when they've taken stances for different issues. And so maybe for our next Slapster meetup, I'll kind of return to some of those themes again. But I would say image repair is going to be the field of thought that I would encourage that person to think. I could literally go. There's like 20 different strategies that I could go through. So I'm not trying to not give a direct answer. It's
No,
like
no, no.
it depends on such carefully nuanced things. So if I say something, sometimes you can be defiant and just say, no, we're going to stand up. Other times you could try to transcend the criticism. We're trying to represent the very best of our community and all of our community. Sometimes you try to get other community partners, what we call third party image repair, where you feel like we can't repair our image itself, but what we can do is get our customers, maybe those community activists, to testify to the role that we play in the community. So you don't praise yourself, but you don't praise yourself, but you have someone build you up. So like for instance, if anyone ever comes to Silver Lining, I'm gonna be out there in the street saying, hey y'all, this is what they're about. Like I would be a third party image
Yes.
repair person for them. And that's part of the idea of the partners.
Yeah. And I think, by the way, I think it's so interesting to think of it. I love that, like, one of the options of image repair is defiance, right?
Yes,
You all are mad at me. You're all trying to break down my image. I'm standing my ground. I'm doubling down on it, right? So
that's
image
right.
repair doesn't necessarily mean backing down and
Not
trying
at
to like
all.
fix things. It means continuing to tweak and optimize the strategy to meet the moment.
That's right. And I think to to your point, it just means that we're strategic in how we communicate. But I think we often equate strategic with, laying down and dying. And these, no, no, no. That's not what we're saying. We're saying be
Yes.
strategic with knowing what the outcome you want to be.
I actually I don't know what everyone else in the room. I just think that's so helpful because I think that certainly all my like white woman guilt always thinks like, oh my God, if I'm not saying something, my silence makes me complicit and I'm not being a good ally. But
Right.
this idea of actually backing off a little bit and saying, well, is it even appropriate for me to say something right now? And
That's right.
and where, and if it's not, how can I move in other ways, right? Where is money helpful? Where is advocacy helpful? Where is sitting at a table and negotiating helpful? Where is moving where I have influence helpful? And actually being much more strategic is
Yes.
I just think I mean, so obvious when you say it, but so helpful. I don't know why it's not so obvious until this
Well, and if I
moment.
can if I can piggyback off of that to something that I even saw pop in the maybe the question Q&A box or the in just the chat box, someone raised the question about like funding often doesn't go to
Yes.
minority owned businesses or like that's one of those places where like especially to my majority culture folks out there, this is your place because you can open doors for some of these
Yes.
businesses that others will not, like they don't have access to. And
Yes.
so I'll often get the question from people, well, what should we do? And my key thing is, what are you prepared to do? Are you prepared to open your network? Are you prepared to help make introductions? Because those are meaningful things. It's like that classic Jay-Z line, money talks, so talk more bucks. People are trying to get access to capital to help scale their businesses. And if you have those kinds of networks, share the wealth. It is not a zero-sum game.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So going to that question, Theon, I think that I'm in it. So the question that came in the Q&A, just so I can honor whoever asked it,
Please.
it's how do we deal with the disparity that exists with getting funding for BIPOC small businesses versus Caucasian owned businesses? And well, let me just ask you the question as it stands. I'll give you the floor, and then I want to do an interpretation of it and ask you it again another way.
Yeah. So, I mean, so I think the question, like, how do we deal? So the key question, the key aspect of that question is who is the we?
Yeah.
And so is the we the businesses? Is the we organizations like Silver Lining or someone like me who's partnering with, or I mean, because it all lies in who is the we there. So I mean, for the sake of question, if you're thinking about how do like we as those who are concerned about helping small businesses scale, I think it's incumbent upon us to try to help build bridges and relationships and opportunities. Because I'll say this about your point, it's like what I find a lot of, and I think Silver Lining is an exception to this, so I want to make sure that I don't see them as in, but it's like a lot of people and a lot of organizations recruit minority owned, women owned businesses as kind of like window dressing to try to check a
100%.
DEI box.
100%.
And they try to recruit certain types of businesses. So what are the ones that have the greatest likelihood of success? But
Yes.
otherwise, other businesses that could do a lot with some support are left out there high and dry. It's like, how do I navigate this space? And so I think it's incumbent upon us to be building relationships with sources of capital. It's incumbent upon us to be challenging, and I mean challenging. This is where we publicly use our voices to speak out against the ways in which you commodify marginalized peoples as simply trading cards to show how woke you are. I have no
Yes.
time for that kind of definition of DEI. That's offensive, and I would argue it's kind of what the movie Get Out is talking about.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's an entry point. But if there's more in terms of what do the businesses do, I think that's another like that's another we can go on that as well. Yeah.
it's huge. And I think that, I mean, the question around capital for small businesses, for marginalized communities is a great question because there is, to your point, Theon, I mean, as I sit in so many of these rooms around the people making these decisions, right? They're releasing a little bit of money. They're gaming who
Yes,
gets it so that they can get a PR story, not so they
that's
can change
exactly right.
access. And the tokenism of it is, I think, more harmful than helpful.
Oh yes,
Designing equity investment solutions when small businesses need debt, not venture capital. I mean, it's all being built from the system and the thinking that has got us into this mess,
that's
not
right.
from the system and the thinking that create real change. That's why I appreciate your thought about advanced preparation so much, right?
Yeah,
I always say, like, be wary of someone with a lot of feisty opinions about justice who you can't see had done any work on that issue for the
that's
last,
right.
for more than 3 days, right? I mean, it's lovely to march and move our bodies, good, but
Right.
like commitment over tokenism or commitment over statements, that's like lifetimes of work commitment, not, a social post.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, what are you prepared to sacrifice because you believe in this so much? That's always my question for people.
Right.
Because if you're not prepared to sacrifice anything, I don't know what we're talking about here.
Oh, oh, yes. Okay, good, good, good. Okay, we've got another question. There's two. So question from Lizzie is, what about handling social justice issues with existing clients and customers? Are there thoughts and best practices generally? So I've got a going concern, I've got existing customers. Lizzie, do you want to say more about that if you're still in the room, or do you want to let Theon take it from there? Oh, actually, I just saw the secondary comment.
No.
Specifically if we see that one of our clients is possibly violating a social justice principle. So what do we do when we see someone in our sphere of influence, our customers, our clients, maybe our staff, are violating something that we believe in or that is
That's a
a justice
wonderful
issue?
question. I'm gonna give an example from a board that I sit on. I sit on a board for an outdoor leadership center. So basically, you have a lot of executive programs for taking people on wilderness excursions, trying to teach them leadership. And so I sit on a board for an outdoor leadership center. And we were in a board meeting, and I was kind of brought on this board to try to help them think about matters of justice more concretely. And they kind of rewrote their core values to kind of make justice at the center. Uh, you know, but then we get in this board meeting, and I'm just hearing a lot of these comments. And from one board member in particular, is like, this is deeply problematic. And I'm like about to start dropping some four-letter words. I'm so offended. So in this situation, I had to figure out what is the problem here? Because, and I want to be clear, we all come to this conversation differently and from different starting points. This fall, I'm going to teach a class on Black political communication. Um, and I'll have to tell all of my students, please do not go home and blast all of your families at Thanksgiving. I cannot deal with the volume of email that I get after Thanksgiving from y'all blasting all your families. And my point there is everyone has a different starting point. And so
Mhm.
if I'm evaluating that client or that customer, is this person's starting point a matter of a lack of education? That doesn't make it right, and that doesn't mean that we just brush it aside. That's not my point. But is it a matter of a lack of education? That's different than oppositional to social justice causes. And so if someone who says to me like, I don't understand blah, 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 blah. Okay, my task is to help you understand. And in this space, these are our core values. If, on the other hand, someone's like, well, I think that all this is just woke nonsense designed to help overthrow the United States of America. Okay, that's a different person there. That person, our relationship may not be the best moving forward. And I'll give you an example of where this hits my bottom line. I was meeting with a donor recently, and
Mhm.
this donor was talking, and I should state at the outset, I'm a strong supporter of public education and the ways in which we need to further fund it and more robust support for public education. This donor wanted to give us a lot of money and is like, hey, part of our funding initiative is we want to keep as many kids out of Chicago public schools as possible and give all that money to private charter schools. Thank you for the meeting. Like, we're done. Like, our values are not aligned. Like, to take money from you would be violating my core values for this center that I lead. That's where I wish you all the best in the future, but this is where we probably aren't going to have a really good relationship. And so if it's a matter of education, let's sit here in this space and try to get aligned. If it's a matter where we're diametrically opposed, hey, what did Isaac Hayes say? Walk on by.
Walk
I'm
on
sorry.
by. I love that. Okay, two last questions as we start to filter out. What if the issue is deeply personal and we want to identity repair before contributing to the conversation?
And we want to identify. I'm just teasing out the
Yeah, I don't want
question.
to call out who asked the question in case you want it
Yeah,
to be confidential, but if you're prepared
yeah,
to say more and you're willing to come off mute and say more. Okay, Myra,
yeah.
I see your hand. Yeah, say more for us.
So thank you for this amazing conversation. And it touches me because I care so much about social injustice. And there are some areas in my upbringing that created a lot of bias
Sure, of
in my
course.
life. And so as I want to in my adult life and use my platform, the business platform to share more authentically where my
Sure.
heart is and how it's aligned with with correcting social
Right.
injustice. I'm in that space where, yeah, I was definitely taught to fear like the backlash.
Of
I
course.
mean, it started in my own family. So if I speak out against my own family and I get pummeled, I sure as
Hmm.
heck am not going to get on video and Instagram and say what I think and then have all these unknown people create crazy comments and that are out of context. And so that's what I mean about, you spoke about image repair.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
that's what I was talking about. Okay. Well, there's some identity stuff that contributes to image, right? I
Yes.
definitely recognize that the image of me often gets um often gets people get the wrong version of me based on what
Sure.
they assume about me when they look at
Yes.
me. And have been historically keeping myself safe by not
Sure.
not speaking against it, not correcting their assumptions, just sort of like letting it go. So at this stage of my life, when in my 50s, I'm like, screw this.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I don't want this anymore. And I want to really be totally authentic, put out there what I really believe, and live the rest of my life in that space.
Yeah.
I need a little support in terms of figuring out, okay, well, what are the steps that I can do before I actually get on a video or whatever? Because I know that this particular problem for me or
Sure.
challenge is the thing that keeps me from writing, speaking, driving my platform bigger and higher.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
just totally locks me down. And so yeah, I would welcome any
No,
steps
that's
you could
I
offer.
love that. So I think I'll give you 2 or 3 steps, depending on how long-winded I get here. But first of all, I love I love what you just said. And I would tell you just as a way of encouragement, don't fail to see the potential impact that someone given your particular identity positionality can have.
Mhm.
Let me say that there's certain social justice issues I'm expected to speak about.
Mhm.
I'm expected to talk about certain issues. What can be really a catalyst for change, and when someone who maybe we thought of in one way comes out and says, "No, I'm concerned about this too." I mean, that alone explains the power in terms of getting people registered to vote, and also the backlash against someone like Taylor Swift. She hadn't said anything, and then she's like, "Hey, I got to do this. I got to say about voting." And so, like, there was power in someone who we didn't expect to say anything actually saying something. So there's tremendous power in that. Now, in terms of you preparing yourself to say something, I would say first off, build some relationships with people who are engaged with this issue from an advocacy standpoint that is salient to you. So where the relationships come, and don't try to come and be someone you're not. Come in and just like, here's who I am, here's my background, and here's why I'm here today. Like, be yourself. Like, be yourself. It's like, here's who I am. Uh, okay. So number one, start building those relationships. Number two, I'm not presuming or assuming, I'm just giving, here's the steps I would give. Educate yourself on the issue. One of the mistakes that people make when they're coming into an issue that they maybe maintain silence on or not engaged for is they come into the issue and they want all the activists to do all the education for them. No, no, no. Google exists. There's wonderful documentaries. There's wonderful reading. I was speaking in Denver a couple of weeks ago, and I was speaking about a topic, and someone came to the room and they kind of wanted me to give them the history of corporate America and hip hop in 5 minutes. Like, that's a very long relationship that I cannot do for you. Like, and I was like, it's kind of like I'm happy to do what I can for you, but that's not a simple question to ask me. There's a lot of resources that I could point you to, but what I'm saying is demonstrate a commitment to educating yourself on the issue. Now, of course, it's not a problem to ask people for resources or recommendations. That's not what I'm saying here. But the mistake people make is they make the people who bear the burden of these realities become their teachers, and many of them are just too exhausted to try to do this right now. And so I would say is don't ask them to be your coach on that.
I
And,
love that you said that. I love
yeah,
that you said that. And I completely agree. And in my case,
yeah,
this is an example. That's that's a little bit part of it, right? Like
yeah,
there are certain things that I experience personally that makes me able to speak on that issue from
of
a
course.
personal perspective, right? So sometimes when I think about, okay, there's there's a limit to something I understand on this issue, but my personal experience informed me a lot about what this issue is, so
Yeah.
that I could feel like there was an injustice. Like I know there was an
Yes.
injustice because I
Yes.
experienced it and
Of
saw this,
course.
and I felt those experiences along with this other person.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm sensitive to that because of that intimate experience.
Yes.
And then so when I think about, okay, that person is no longer alive,
Hmm.
so I cannot get an understanding of the issue from that person's perspective, right?
Sure.
They were like first person touched. I was like second
Sure.
person touched because I love them, right?
Of
And
course.
so sometimes I feel concerned about getting information from outside sources because I don't know the validity of
Yeah.
that. I don't know if, I don't know to know any different if it's like you said about, hey, a business is trying to look like their image repair. They're trying to, be in alignment with what's current.
Yeah.
And I can't tell if it's that or if it's authentic, right? Like that's what
Sure.
I'm saying. Because I'm aware that I have this like, because I've been silent on it so long, it's almost like
Sure.
after a while, um, you become blind too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. And what I would tell you to do in terms of checking and vetting people is, depending on what the issue is, ask the advocacy organizations in your community or even national organizations, who are organizations that they look at as authentic,
Hmm.
because they're going to have the most at stake here.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's super helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
And the final thing I'll say to you is, as you're entering a space, there will be discomfort. One of the things I love about doing workshops or even teaching semester-long classes on these types of issues is someone inevitably will ask me, what if I say something that's problematic? And I will always tell them, it's not if, it's when. Generally, you will say something problematic, and you have to be prepared to say, I messed up, I apologize, and we got to keep it moving.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, in the name of, we've got 2 minutes. Thank you, Myra. I love this question from Naima as well. As the owner of a woman-owned, minority-owned business, what due diligence can I do to determine whether I am not being used as a token to tick a box? Ooh, I love that question so much.
Yes. Okay, this is okay. So there's so much I can say right here, and there's
I
so many
know. We
Jay-Z.
need like 4 more
There's
hours, I think.
so many Jay-Z songs going through my head right now. Okay, what I would say is that I assume, let me put it this way, the institution I teach at, there's a reason why you will see my face on many advertisements. You will
Hmm.
see when they're trying to recruit students, you will see my name all around Wheaton College. Um, I'm a Black professor who they think has done a lot of good work and received a lot of awards. They want to showcase that. Now,
Hmm.
are they trying to play me, if I can switch into a street vernacular here? Certainly they are. Do I recognize the hustle? 100%. And I would say that part of belonging to a marginalized, like you're talking about a marginalized, female-owned, woman-owned business, is like, how do you almost try to out hustle those who are trying to
You got to
hustle you?
play the player. You got to play the player,
Exactly.
Theon.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I might have the book Pimp by Iceberg Slim next to me on my shelf over here, but it's like there's a sense in which that's true. Like it's about recognizing, what is their incentive? And that's why I say, what do they have at stake in your success and your demise? And how can you leverage that to get what you want? Let me put it this way. Wheaton College will generally not fire me for much of my advocacy because I know what my currency here is. If I'm doing work in the community and I'm publishing my butt off, they know I can leave at any moment for a school. As long as I know my currency, I can avoid getting played in a detrimental way. It's always precarious and it always has to be reevaluated. But I think understanding that they do have motives that are not just altruistic and expecting that and recognizing that and operating in light of that. That's how you navigate that from my standpoint.
I love that. And then continue to monitor the situation. It
Exactly.
continuously
That's exactly right.
evolves, right? From before.
That's exactly
Okay.
right.
We're at time. I want to honor that. But Chris Matagaro, did you have your hand up at some point? I just want to make sure everyone got a chance to go. Do you have a quick question?
No, just a reaction. Sorry about that. All good.
Oh, you were like high-fiving. You were
I love
snapping.
it. I love it. I work with Naima, and I'm glad she's here. She asked that question. Love it, Theon. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, guys, we are at exactly the time. Oh crap, we're 1 minute over. I'm trying very hard to be better at being on time, and I fail all the time. So I will simply say, Theon, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are truly one of my favorite people. I love how you think about things. This has been so helpful. I have taken a lot of really genuinely helpful things away personally. So thank you. Thank you for the work you do, what you stand for, how you operate in the world. You're a real gift.
Well, I'm just grateful for it. And in a couple weeks, I get a chance to treat you to a meal here in Chicago. So we're
No,
gonna make it
I'm
happen.
buying you lunch. We're gonna fight
Oh.
about that later, but I've already decided.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
and
much,
for
my
all
friend.
of you guys still in the room, so great to be with you guys always. And to the point of someone in the room, we will turn this into a connecting campaign. We'll put this in Slap Center. We'll make this something that can live on forever. So not one and done, but let's use this and apply it and keep using our voice in the right, strategic, effective ways. Amazing. Thank you, Theon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.